Imagine you're an archaeologist. You're digging in a cave in France, and you find a human skull. Clean, polished, every scrap of flesh carefully removed. At first you think, burial ritual, ceremony, respect for the dead. Then you notice the cut marks. Precise, deliberate. The same marks you'd find on a deer bone after someone ate it. And then, the marrow. Someone cracked this skull open, not to honor it, to eat it. Here's the thing. This wasn't some isolated maniac. This was your ancestor. And evidence like this doesn't exist in one place. It exists almost everywhere ancient humans lived. So, why were we eating each other? And why does the answer make it so much weirder? For a long time, archaeologists found these bones and explained them away. Maybe it was ritual defleshing, like a burial custom. Maybe animals did it. Maybe it's a coincidence. But then forensic analysis caught up. And it turns out, you can tell the difference between a human bone that was ceremonially cleaned and one that was processed for food. They don't look the same. Food bones show specific cut patterns near muscle attachment points. They show percussion marks where marrow was extracted. They show heat damage from cooking. And they show something called pot polish, the kind of wear you only get when a bone has been boiled in a ceramic vessel. Sites across Europe, the Americas, Asia, the Pacific, all showing the same marks. Same technique. Same intention. This wasn't violence. This was dinner. But here's what no one could answer. Why? These weren't people starving in a wasteland. Some of these sites show full, stable settlements. Plenty of regular animal bones right alongside the human ones. They didn't have to. They chose to. And the moment you start asking why, you stumble into something much darker than starvation. Anthropologists split prehistoric cannibalism into three main types. First, survival cannibalism, famine, isolation, desperation, the Donner Party kind. This is the one everyone imagines. It happened, but it's probably the least common in the prehistoric record. Second, warfare cannibalism. You defeat an enemy, you eat them, sometimes as humiliation, sometimes as a way of absorbing their strength. Evidence for this exists across the ancient world. Trophy skulls, processed enemy remains found at conflict sites. But the third type is the one that changes everything. Endocannibalism, eating your own people, voluntarily, as part of burial practice. Instead of placing the dead in the ground, some cultures consumed them. Flesh, bone, brain. The idea: you carry the person with you. They don't disappear into the earth. They continue, inside you, inside your children. This wasn't savagery. This was, by its own internal logic, an act of love, which sounds almost tender, until you find out what happens to a population that does this for thousands of years. In the highlands of Papua New Guinea, well into the 20th century, a group called the Four People practiced endocannibalism. They ate their dead as a form of mourning and honor. Then people started dying in a very specific way. Trembling that got worse. Loss of coordination, uncontrollable laughing, and then death. Every single time. They called it kuru. Outsiders called it the laughing sickness. It took scientists decades to figure out what was happening. The answer was stranger than anyone expected. Kuru is a prion disease. Prions are misfolded proteins. They spread through nervous tissue, specifically brain tissue. They are not bacteria, not viruses. They cannot be killed by heat, radiation, or disinfectant. Once they enter a brain, they slowly turn it to sponge. The Four People were passing kuru from person to person through consumption for generations. It was devastating entire family lines. But then, the researchers noticed something odd. Some people weren't getting sick, even after consuming infected tissue, even after years of exposure. Some of them were immune. And when scientists looked at their DNA, They found a mutation, one that didn't exist in isolated populations, one that pointed somewhere much, much further back. In 2015, geneticists studying ancient human populations found something buried in the DNA of people across multiple continents, a specific variant of the PRNP gene, the gene that governs prion proteins. This variant, called G127V, provides near-total resistance to prion diseases. It is not random. It does not appear in populations with no history of cannibalism. It appears precisely where and when the archaeological evidence for cannibalism is strongest. The conclusion was slow to be accepted, but it's now widely considered credible. Ancient humans were exposed to prion diseases so frequently through the consumption of human tissue that natural selection intervened. The people who survived were the ones with the mutation. They passed it on. Over thousands of years, it spread. Think about what that means. The gene is proof. Proof that cannibalism was so common, so routine in our deep past that it actually changed our biology. It left a scar in our DNA. We weren't occasionally eating people in moments of crisis. We were doing it enough that evolution noticed. But here's the part that goes even further back, because we're not just talking about modern humans. The earliest confirmed cannibalism evidence comes from Atapuerca, Spain, around 800,000 years ago. A species called Homo antecessor, not Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals, but an earlier ancestor, was processing human bones alongside animal bones. Same tools, same technique, no distinction. Neanderthals, multiple sites showing cannibalism. Belgium, France, Croatia, Homo heidelbergensis, same evidence. Early Homo sapiens, same. Across at least 5 separate human species, spanning hundreds of thousands of years, on multiple continents, the behavior appears. Independently, repeatedly. This is not a cultural quirk from one isolated group. This is something that kept re-emerging across the entire genus Homo. And here's the part that's almost impossible to sit with. When Neanderthals disappeared, when our species was expanding and they were vanishing, some researchers have pointed to evidence of what may have been interspecies cannibalism. Neanderthal bones, processed in the same way as game animals, found at early Homo sapiens sites. We may have eaten the last of them. Which leaves one final question, the one the whole story has been quietly building toward. Why did we stop? Here's a theory that some researchers now take seriously. Cannibalism declined, at least in part, because it kept killing people. Not through violence, through disease. Prion diseases, bacterial infections, viruses that live in human tissue. Every time a group engaged in regular cannibalism, they were creating a perfect feedback loop for pathogens that had evolved specifically to live in humans. And those pathogens were extraordinarily good at it. In other words, we may have stopped eating each other, not because we developed morality, but because the ones who kept doing it kept dying. And the ones who developed cultural taboos against it survived longer. The disgust instinct, some researchers argue, is partly a disease avoidance mechanism. The feeling of revulsion at eating a human body might be, on some ancient biological level, your immune system trying to protect you. We didn't stop because we became civilized. We stopped because the meal was killing us back. So here's the thing you didn't expect at the start. Cannibalism wasn't the behavior of monsters. It wasn't the exception in human history. For most of our existence on this planet, across multiple species, multiple continents, hundreds of thousands of years, it was ordinary. And the strangest part, for the groups who practiced endocannibalism, eating their own dead out of love, out of ritual, out of a desire to keep someone alive inside them, they weren't wrong about everything. The people they consumed did stay with them, written permanently into their immune systems, encoded in a gene variant that still exists today. In some populations, that mutation is still detectable, a biological memory of something we did so long and so often that our bodies adapted to survive it. You don't carry a gene like that from doing something once. You carry it because, for a very long time, this is just what humans did. Back to that skull in the French cave. Cleaned, polished, cracked open. Whoever held it, they probably didn't think of themselves as doing something horrifying. They may have been grieving. They may have been honoring someone they loved. They may have been following a tradition so old that no one alive remembered where it started. They were, in the only way they knew, trying to hold on. The marrow was gone. The person was not. Not yet.
And that's it for today. If you enjoyed this completely unnecessary journey through whatever chaos just happened, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next adventure. Got another crazy what-if question? Drop it in the comments. Who knows? Maybe we'll accidentally answer it next. Until then, stay curious, stay weird. See you in the next one.